Hey everyone, this is FIDE Master Kostya here for Chess.com's YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be continuing my series about the World Cup, showing you guys some highlights. So without a doubt, the biggest upset so far in the whole World Cup has been Grandmaster Yevgeny Tomashevsky defeating Levon Aronian, and this happened in round 3, and I wanted to show you guys the first game of this match, which pretty much decided everything. Black here is Tomashevsky, white is Aronian, the number 2 player in the world, and as we can see, the position is pretty complicated. You know, white's king is kind of exposed, and white has 2 bishops, but they have some weaknesses. Black's pieces seem to be quite active, and all in all, it's a pretty complicated position. But here, Yevgeny Tomashevsky really started outplaying the number 2 player in the world, and he started with the move Rook f7. So he simply wants to play Rook f8, double rooks against this f3 pawn, and checkmate white's king. So Aronian played bishop c1, bishop g6 was played, and now e4. So white opens up this discovered attack against black's queen and tries to create some counterplay in the center. So Tomashevsky played queen h3, and now, of course, he's threatening to take this pawn on e4, so Aronian played e takes d5, and here knight d4. And maybe this move was missed by Levon, but it's very strong, and after this move, black is simply getting a huge initiative. This in-between move hits both the queen and the bishop and the f3 pawn, and white is in serious trouble because his king is starting to feel really uncomfortable. So queen d1 was played, knight takes e2, queen takes e2, and now another very strong move, bishop h5. Instead of worrying about, this pawn capturing on e6, Tomashevsky just goes for the counterattack with bishop h5, and white has no good way of defending this f3 pawn. So king g1 was played, bishop takes f3, and now queen f2. So Aronian is trying to do his best just to hold on and not get checkmated. But after queen g4 check and queen g3, Tomashevsky decided to trade queens and just take this pawn on d5. And I think this was a good practical decision, because you didn't see any forced win, you didn't see any forced way to checkmate white's king. But now this endgame is just very, very good for black. He's got an extra pawn, and his bishop on d5 I think is stronger than white's bishop. And the reason for that is it's got a defender on e6, so this outpost on d5 is pretty much unbreakable and untouchable. And in these kinds of endgames with opposite color bishops, if one side has a very strong bishop outposted in the center, then usually that side is going to have an advantage. Now if white could just trade off all the rooks, then the position would more likely than not be a draw, because black just wouldn't be able to win because of the opposite color bishops. But with rooks on the board, it's a whole different story, and black's advantage is very real and very much long term. So Aronian played bishop e3, a5, b5, and a4. So Tomashevsky fixed this pawn on a3, which will be a target later on for either his rook or his king. Aronian traded a pair of rooks, rook f1 check, king g6, rook f4. Now white's task here is just try to keep black from getting more and more play. So far black has one extra pawn, but it's not so relevant because these pawns on g7 and h7 are hard to push, and it will be really hard to create a passed pawn. It just takes a lot of moves. What black is likely going to do is just try to activate his rook and try to get counterplay against white's placement of their pawns, because all of white's pawns are separated and quite weak, so it will be hard for white to hold them, especially since black's bishop is so active, and as soon as this rook gets activated, white's going to be in serious trouble. So h6 was played, king f2, bishop b3, rook g4 check, king h7, rook d4, and rook c8. So the rook finally gets into the game. b6. Aronian is hoping for one day to maybe come in and attack this b7 pawn and get some counterplay, but this is kind of a ghost threat, because after bishop d5, black will be able to defend all of their weaknesses at once. So rook c2 check was played, king e1, and now rook a2. And now black, as we can see, is getting closer and closer to victory. He's already got his eye on this pawn, and White was forced to make this very passive move, bishop c1, to defend the a3 pawn. Now after rook g2, as we can see, White's position is just falling apart. It's very hard to defend this pawn, and Black is pretty much just winning the game here. So Aronian played bishop f4. If he tried to move like rook d3, I think the simplest way to win would just be rook g1 check, king d2, and rook d1 check, and White loses the bishop. So instead, Aronian played bishop f4, and now rook g1 check, king d2, and rook a1. And White has no way of defending this a-pawn. So Tomashevsky has really displayed some very accurate chess here, and he's simply outplayed the world number 2 player and got himself a winning endgame. So king c3, rook takes a3, king b4, rook a1, bishop d2. White's only chance here is to try and activate all his pieces and hope that Black won't be able to make progress or will blunder and lose some kind of coordination. But after bishop d5, it's quite unlikely. This bishop is such a strong piece, controlling the whole board in the center and defend it. And yeah, White's defense here is very difficult, if not impossible. So bishop c3, rook a2, rook d3, king g6, rook d4, a3, rook d3, king f5, bishop d2, and simply rook a1. And the point of this move is that if White takes the a3 pawn, Black will simply trade rooks and take this pawn on e5, and this endgame is definitely winning for Black because he's simply just going to create a passed pawn on the king side, and with 2 pawns separated, White's chances of surviving are very small. Instead, Aronian played bishop c3, rook a2, bishop d2, king e4, rook e3 check, king d4. And now that Black's king has gotten into the game and, supporting his pieces, the game is just more or less over. Bishop c1 was played, rook c2, and here Aronian decided to resign. The point is that Black is threatening a2, just queening the pawn, and he's also threatening to take the bishop. And if bishop takes a3, then the rook ends up hanging on e3. So a great game by Yevgeny Tomashevsky, a 2700 player from Russia, and with this upset, he was able to draw the next game and eliminated Aronian from the competition and moved on to round 4. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and next time I'll be providing more highlights from the recent World Cup. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you around on Chess.com.